2021. This is a round 1 match from the candidates between Crazy House legend and former Crazy House world champion Opperwesen and a player named Doganswer. I'm not sure where Doganswer is from, but Opperwesen is from the Netherlands. Opperwesen is a huge favorite in this match. I don't know too much about Doganswer. He's like 200 points below Opperwesen in rating, 250 points or so. I also noticed that I have a 3-0 lead versus Doganswer, and that's a very bad sign for him, I think. So let's see how many points Doganswer can pick from Opperwesen. They will be playing 10 games, regardless of the outcome, and 5-5 is an okay result. And they are about to start any minute now. And let's follow Opperwesen and see when this begins. Also, I have some cookies here. Do you accept cookies? Yes, I do. And some milk. So I'm set, and I'm just waiting for the players to arrive. Do we have any viewers? Yeah, one viewer. Welcome, Vladimir. What's my rating is? What my rating is? It's, I don't know, 2400 something in Crazy House. I couldn't care less, actually. I'm an old has-been. And old has-beens, they don't care about rating. So, yeah, I can see that Doganswer is online. So hopefully they will start any minute. Any predictions for the outcome? What do you guys in the chat say? Stanley Kubrick is here. I thought you were dead. So, prediction from Vladimir, 8-2 in favor of Opperwesen. Let's see if you are right, Vladimir. Sounds like a reasonable prediction. And off they go. And Opperwesen is black in the first game. Doganswer is white. Let's see if we can put any pressure on Opperwesen in the opening. Opperwesen is very strong in the opening, I think. Lots of ideas. As you can see, Opperwesen is a 200 ELO point favorite, and ratings don't lie. Looks like that came as a surprise for Doganswer. He spent a few seconds choosing line. And I know that Opperwesen likes to sack that knight on f6. And that cannot possibly have come as a surprise for Doganswer. Sometimes Opperwesen actually spends a tempo sacrificing the knight on f6. And if white accepts taking the knight here, black gets a very nice game with a perfect pawn structure, and it's hard for white to find a natural developing plan. So usually white ignores the knight. So this is kind of a cat and mouse game now. Black leaving the knight on prise on f6 for several moves. And we're out of theory. This is unusual. And the question is if black should try to get the bishop outside the pawn chain before he plays e6, and he chooses to do so. And it's probably a wise decision. Living in at home at c8 is very passive. But now white takes the opportunity to create some weaknesses in the black camp. Of course black can take here twice, but it leaves f7 a bit vulnerable. Although it seems really easy to just mend it by dropping a pawn on f7. The black position is a bit cramped with the e-pawn stacked on the e-file, but I don't quite trust the white pawn sacrifice there. Looks a bit unsound to me, if you ask. So the extra pawn for black is pretty healthy, I would say. And the pawn on e6 is easily defended by a pawn on f7. So a natural developing idea for black would maybe be to fianchetto the dark squared bishop. And this looks like a very good version for any kind of fianchetto setup for black. You can just put the bishop on g7, maybe play h6, castle, and everything looks fine for black. Opperwesen needs to watch out. He has slightly worse time though. And the black pawn formation is a real brick wall. The white pieces are just staring at the pawns. It's hard for white to do anything. On the other hand, it's not so easy for black to get any momentum. At some point he would like to maybe push the e-pawn, but it's not so easy. Or is this the point where you play e5? Because if white takes, knight takes, and the bishop takes here, you can take check on f3. Black just develops calmly, but the clock is ticking fast here. And it looks like white is trying to put black to sleep. Just playing innocuous moves, waiting for black to spend time. Okay, so here comes the pawn push. But opperwesen is down to his last 30 seconds, which might prove a slight problem. So white gains some material. I'm not sure what the idea is, because there are several strong moves here for black. Black could even, for instance, give his queen on d4, but he goes on the offense here. I suppose white needs to take the knight. Anything else would be okay, but now black can just take on d2 whenever he likes. So black has the attack, and he can take on d4 with either the pawn or the knight. This pawn is threatening to land on g2. Also f3 is hanging. Black has a perfect defense. No chance for white to get to the black king. And now white is showing signs of desperation. Pawn d2 maybe, or simply retreating with the king. Hard to see anything active for white here. Black will just put some diags here on h3 and g2, and the game will be over. For instance, now you can just ignore the threat to the queen and put the pawn on h3, because taking here would allow a diag on g2. I was surprised that the white played pawn h6. Wasn't pawn at g7 better? All of a sudden this is looking murky. Now it's the mate threat here on, and white is just crashing through. What happened here? Queen here is mate, and all of a sudden white won. What happened? That was a surprising start. I was thinking opperwesen had that in the bag. He just forgot to wrap it up. So black chooses a kind of accelerated fianchetto with a more loose pawn structure on h6 and g5 rather than h7 and g6. And then white has this idea. He hasn't castled yet, so the rook is waiting here on the h file. And this is already looking dangerous for black. Milk and cookies and crazy house. This is great. So white managed to open the h file. Even with the black pawn on g5, white can just retreat with his bishop. Or he can go forward also. I would prefer just simply retreating. But for instance, a pawn on h6 will get the material back. And look at that aggressive rook. Pieces can land on h6, h7, and black quickly tries to block the h-file. Probably a very wise decision. So putting the bishop on e4 is very instructive. It points on towards the queen side and also towards the king side. Quite imposing white bishop there. But black looks pretty safe, I would say. No super big weaknesses. The bishop is trapped, but it was bound to die anyway. So white will take here, and maybe you should have just pushed the pawn forward rather than taking h4. I'm not sure, because now the h-file is in risk of getting open again. These bishops are really nice. So the question is, do you go maybe to e5, trying to trade off the dark squared bishop? White is once again using force to pry the black king side position open. Maybe a knight here, pawns here to get to the dark squared defender. White spends some time on capturing the pawn on c6, and that rook on a8 might come in handy sometime. Typical move, just placing a piece on the board, forcing white to interpose with a pawn, spending a pawn there. And rather than taking back here, black pushes forward, taking here, threatening the queen, also wanting to pick up the pawn on c3, but white escapes to the king side, creating some nasty threats against the black king. And the black king is in dire straits now. A pawn here and a rook on g8 looks very dangerous. Black tries to lure the white queen back, because if the king takes, he had bishop at g4, forking king and queen. But it was probably worth a pawn, luring the white queen back. And black doesn't spend any tempo taking on a8, but now that... what is happening here? Why didn't black just take on e7? This looks a bit odd. Because all you need now is really a pawn, yeah. And there you got the pawn. A very violent move by white, but all you need is the pawn for h7, and it's over, yeah. Nice finish by opperwesen. Okay, so 1-1. And we see that the players repeat the opening from the first game. And as you probably remember, black got a huge advantage after a while. And doganswer was really lucky to escape with the win there. So let's see what doganswer has in store. He needs to improve on his game. He tried e6 and it was not the best idea. He didn't get compensation for the pawn, so I suspect that we will see another move here for white. Yes, and he goes for the knight, which is semi-trapped. I suppose you could escape with the knight. But you could also simply leave the knight on e4, trying to get compensation for the knight. So the question is this a weakness maybe? So, how many viewers do we have? Oh, quite a few. Welcome everybody. Tjenare Mårten. Okay, so this move was a bit annoying for black. You threatened to damage the black pawn structure, and you also threatened an important pawn on b7. And even though bishop to c8 looks very passive, I'm not sure if there is a better move. Okay, so this is a counter threat. Threatening the bishop on e3. And if you can take on e3, you can place a bishop on c8, which looks much better. Damn, these cookies are good. So this is looking wild now. Okay. The black king was safer, so white couldn't go for the queen trade. And now what? Black could pick up a pawn here and then take back on e6. But it looks a bit dangerous. But maybe that's the way to go. So an interesting move here from black. And now white threatens to put a diag on d7. I'm not sure what opperwesen's idea here was, actually. So at some point maybe taking on d4, because if you take here with the queen, you can take on c2 and get the queen back. But after taking here, white could place a bishop on a4 and protect c2 before grabbing the knight on e3. Opperwesen down to his last 20 seconds now. Hurry up, Opperwesen. material is equal, and if white takes here, he's a piece up, but black will get a fierce counter attack now, starting with knight f5, and I would probably advise white to give up the queen, because if you start giving pawn here, and bishop can land on g3, picking up center pawns, black is looking fine. So maybe simply bishop f2 or something, protecting the queen. Although protecting the queen, and then a queen drops on... No, never mind. So dog answer also down to its last 20 seconds. And c1 looks like a really awkward place. I wonder why opperwesen didn't play bishop at e3, but... Okay, so black clearly has compensation here for the piece. He has destroyed the white center, got a pawn for the piece, and then another pawn. So the material balance is back. Yeah, both queens looking rather silly here. And the clocks are looking a bit silly too. Oh my. This is going to be a time scramble in the end. The white king slightly worse off. The open d5 might prove a problem here for white at some point, maybe. Ouch. So looks like black is safe here. And that possible queen trade might hurt white. Okay. So the bishop retreats. And black looks super safe now. White is out of material, he has nothing to drop, and black will just put his pieces on the board. Black has a huge lead in material. He's up a whole queen. And this will all end in tears for white. So opperwesen found a forced mate here. Bishop there, the king had to go out on the board, but it doesn't really matter. So nice win for opperwesen, but a bit shaky with the time here. And opperwesen throws a surprise at black, hoping to checkmate him on f7. Will we see queen takes f7 checkmate the next move? Most likely not. But you never know. Maybe a mouse slip here. No. And white renews his mating threat on f7. And black sees it again. Okay, so maybe bishop takes f7. And at the very least, white won a lot of time in the opening. And actually, I think he won the opening duel as well. because black cannot take here because of, for instance, knight at f6. And this just looks super bad for black. Just trade the queens and knight at f6 maybe. So this guy covers c2, covers d1. Great defensive piece. But I wonder about knight at f6 instead. Seemed like a very disruptive move. White could just check here and pick up a pawn maybe. Not sure about that. What about bishop here, take here maybe? But if white gets his hands on the knight here, knight at f6 is once again an option. Oh. So black figures it doesn't matter if white gets another queen. Because there's no really good square for white to put the queen. So if white takes here, black simply takes the knight and takes the rook and a rook and a bishop and a knight. It's quite a useful combination of pieces in hand. A much more versatile combination of pieces in hand than the dual queens. And black might even consider taking here and taking here, I think. Or maybe I'm just hallucinating. Maybe white then castles. Yeah, knight takes c1 and castles. So black only has one piece for two queens and a pawn. That clearly isn't enough, but white's king is not in perfect shape. And black's pieces are sort of semi-dominating the white queens, which are difficult to put on the board in a good spot. Maybe a queen at a4, taking here at some point. Maybe a queen at f6 at some point, taking on e5 and then f4. I'm not sure. And actually, black is just a couple of moves away from checkmating white. So white needs to be a bit careful here. Dog answered down to his last, I was about to say 30 seconds, but it's almost 20 seconds now. So, threatening mate in 1 by knight at h3. And if black takes on g2, that is probably the time for white to launch a counterattack. Instead, black avoids to take on g2. I was thinking taking on d7 and placing a queen on c8 was an excellent opportunity to get at least one queen on the board. But maybe it was too dangerous to leave the pawn here on e2. So this move puts the queen on the board, attacks the rook, and defends f2. Also attacks e5, and black is having some issues with the time here. So this is a nasty move. You cannot take because of queen at f7, but now you can take on f7, take on d7, and is there a finish here? Maybe bishop here, yeah. And now what? Threatening pawn here at d6. That's a mate in one. Come on, upper. You're losing on time. So now white is safe, and he can just forget about defense for a while and just push forward. Threatening mate on c8. The pieces are defended now. Picking up a rook, threatening f8. Yeah, and he found a mate in 2 with those rooks. Opperwesen up 3-1. And I deserve a cookie. We see the same opening again. And let's see who has an improvement in store. So we see exactly the same opening. Then white captured on e6. And now white decides to retreat his bishop instead. So now we're on new territory. Going back with the bishop to c8 might look a bit passive, but the knight on c5 suddenly looks a bit silly too. This is interesting because the knight was trapped, although white has a lot of weaknesses now around his king. Question is if black can find a way to take advantage of that. So even though this move lets out the bishop, it also creates some weaknesses in the black camp, and white goes after the weaknesses quickly. An obvious idea for white is knight at f6. I'm not sure about the e6 move actually. So, threatening c5 and h4. Great move. So white found a way to create some confusion, but looks like black has everything under control, and that white queen is threatened. And a pawn would be nice to place here, but you don't have a pawn. And if you put a bishop there, you will just take as black and put another bishop on f6. The bishop is eyeing b2. So, does white really have time for this? I guess, okay. Interesting. Looks like there could be great compensation, but this knight is hanging. This is a nice move to start with, because putting the queen in front of the king creates a lot of defense, also opening an escape square for the king. And white needs to be really careful now, because how do you block the queen check? So if the king takes, maybe you have knight at d1. And you can place a queen here, picking up the knight on d4 with check, if you like. And of course, a knight check here. You can pick up the rook also. Although it takes some time to take the rook. Not so easy to know what is best here. Instead, black wants to get rid of the bishop, probably so he can take on d3 and bring the queen closer to the white king. So I was expecting queen takes d3 instead, but this is obviously very dangerous too. So maybe you take with the bishop, yeah, threatening a discovered check, or maybe bishop f5. Yeah, probably bishop f5 with the d3 pawn hanging. No, okay. And as you can see, doganswer is just playing with his extra time. The knight is hanging here, actually. And black just plays this safely. Lots of pieces just waiting to be put on the board. Huge lead in material for black. And now it all comes with check. and it's mate pretty soon. Check, check, and a mate on e1. Checkmate. So 4-1 to opperwesen. So, a theoretical line here, e4, e5, and I don't know anything about this, so hopefully I will learn something. Yeah, this is very common. You give your queen and then you can get the knight back. But it looks like this is something doganswer has prepared. Look at the time. And opperwesen is thinking here. Looks like this is the line that doganswer has prepared. So the queen is trapped if you go here. White has bishop e6 picking up the queen. I wouldn't know how to delay the stream, but I don't think the players don't have any advantage listening to my silly move suggestions anyway. And now I'm out of milk and cookies. So a little tactical trick that caught doganswer by surprise. And now it looks like white got out on top. He's up a pawn, and these bishops are providing tremendous defense here, and also being a bit aggressive. Look at the board control here by those bishops. Hard to find a good move for black here. I will check out how you do a delay on the broadcast. Thanks for mentioning it. And that knight isn't looking very aggressive, so white calmly retreats with his bishop. Keeping g5 under control, also blocking the h file a bit. Black looking for counterplay on the dark squares, but now white is up a queen against a piece. So a clear advantage for white. Who brings the queen side knight over to the king side? Threatening c7. suspect maybe... Okay, that's a funny square, but the bishop is protected here, because if black takes, you have queen at e6, forking the king and the bishop, and now you can just pick up b7, can't you? Although f2 is under fire, but okay, interesting. This knight is in a bad spot now. But for instance, you can take on c6, and if black takes here, you have queen at e6, picking up the pawn on h3 and also threatening on h4. Or does white have anything more aggressive? Taking on h3 looks probably perfectly fine. Although maybe bishop takes f2 is annoying. Ooh, this is critical now. So white needs to run with his king. So if white takes, black can drop a knight here, picking up the queen. Also defending g7. This is looking rather scary for white. Even though white is up on material, he has very few pieces on the board. Black has a nice initiative, and white quickly needs to put his pieces back on the board. So e2 is threatened. Apparently white missed that e2 was threatened. Both players down to 10-15 seconds. Objectively speaking, this looks dangerous for both players. I don't know who's better off here. For the time being, white looks safe. Wow, great defense there by Opper. Tricky game, and Opper has 5 points versus 1. I don't think he gave up e2 on purpose, but we can ask Opper afterwards. So we see the same opening repeated again. Opper seems to fancy his chances in this setup, and I don't blame him. He has got excellent chances in all his black games. And doganswer thinks. So no h4 in this game. But after black plays e6, h4 seems like an obvious choice. And judging by the time Opper is spending now, he might have forgotten that the knight is trapped now by h4. Oh, there's the Crazy House Facebook group. Okay, I will check it out later. Some really aggressive moves by black here. He gave up a queen. What happened here? So, check. The queen is hanging. Black is ignoring this. Okay. And this was most likely on purpose, actually, because if the knight moves, we have bishop at g3 picking up the rook. So this might seem like an odd move, taking on a6, but taking with the rook would allow the queen to land on c8. You want the rook to protect the back rank. Yeah, of course you could have played knight h1. And maybe knight h1 was okay, I'm not sure. So, a very murky position here. The rook is hanging on h4, the knight is hanging on f2, the bishop is hanging on h3. At the moment, black is down a queen, but he will get his material back pretty soon. Goose Frabba, I wish I had some cookies for you, but I ate them all. So nice to see that we have quite a few viewers here. Picking up the knight with check. And a rook also. And white gets his own share of threats. Threatening a8, threatening to take on c6 with check. And the king. Is it safe? Because if you put something on g3, or if you play g3, maybe you can even take on g3. Knight f5, and it looks dangerous. Oh, thank you so much. Next time I will have cookies for you. So, just take on g3, come on. Or do you play knight h3? Yeah, knight h3 looks good too. Yeah. Oh, he took on g3. And Opper is really good at finding mates in this type of attacking position. He's very precise. Knight f5 looks natural, but bishop h4 trying to draw the king even further out down the board. But now isn't it mate with rook here, king takes, knight f5. Yeah. The king needs to go this way. You cannot take on h4. So king f4. And then you have knight g2, which is mate in 1. Okay, so this game is over. And knight f5 mate. Good one for Opperwesen, who scores another win. 6 in a row now, and it's 6-1 to Opperwesen. 3 games to go, and we will see another fierce E4, E5 battle. So this is exactly like the previous game. Yeah, we saw rook g3, and the king went back, and then you had bishop g5. And I suppose doganswer had the time to analyze this. Yeah, I was thinking, allow the loss of the queen. How is this now? Oh, you're thinking he's bluffing. Bluffing is probably a bad strategy. But it sure looks like he was bluffing, because this was all forced. Okay, so queen at f6, and this was clearly not prepared. So what do you do here with the white pieces? I suppose you might take on g6. Because if the queen takes, you have knight at f7. Several tempting options here for white. You could just play this sort of positionally. You are a pawn up. So this is inviting queen takes e6, but maybe then knight at g5 is strong. Threatening the queen and threatening to mate on h7. Certainly a very interesting aggressive move by Opperwesen. Haha. Yeah, if Opper thinks for more than 10 seconds, there's a 90% probability he will sack something. Maybe you're right. But what happens now if white simply takes on f2? I don't like this for black at all. Because sacrificing the queen, surely that is nothing. The bishop is covering these squares and the knight is covering e3. I wonder why he didn't simply take on f2. Can you see anything? Guys in the chat? Why didn't he take on f2? Rook at d2? No. Yeah, I didn't see anything for black there. But I suppose this is good. But why not just pick up the free bishop? Okay, so black throws everything he has against the white king. And now what? Looks safe for white. And black cannot just relax because white has some nasty threats. So this was actually kind of dangerous for white. Yeah. And this isn't mate, because the king can go back, but then there is a repetition. Yeah. So at least a draw for black. Can he find more? Because it's far too dangerous to run with the black king. Because if the king goes to e2, black has knight d4 and it's all over. So I suspect we will see a draw here. And black goes for it. Okay. But now, simply nothing. King h1, queen h4, placing a knight here. So queen here, something on. Why didn't he play? Wasn't it enough? Knight here, taking here. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm just blind. Queen h4 was mate. Yeah, you're right, Morten. And for some reason, black didn't take on g5 with a bishop. I'm not sure why, because now he's getting mated. Oh well. Black ignored the repetition and went for the win, and actually had a win, I'm sure. Let's check it out. We've seen those opening moves before. Let's just have a quick look here. Here, yeah. So mate in 6, queen h4, mate in 6. And it goes like this. For instance, if you place a queen here, the idea is knight g3, and this is all forced. Taking here, a dig here, and then a rook on h2, and it's all over. And it doesn't matter what you block with on h3. It was a forced mate. So, opperwesen, we are watching you. 7-1 to opperwesen. And this time, white went for that pawn sacrifice that I didn't like at all. I think this is simply dubious for white. The black position is far too sound for this to be anything for white, I think. And this time opperwesen isn't making the mistake of wasting his time. He will just play a quick pawn at f7 and then fianchetto. finishes development, and White's prospects are quite lackluster. Oh, we're not at the actual game. Okay, so this is the position. So maybe the bishop at a4 is a bit annoying. Okay, I admit that. Obviously, White wants to take on c6 and put the knight to work on e5. So maybe, yeah, just protect the knight. Play some passive defense. And then fianchetto, finish the development, and black is up a healthy pawn. Yeah, you're probably right, Zexon. White should have stayed with the king in the center and tried to make advantage of his extra space. Play h4 instead. You're absolutely right. So White doesn't make use of his compensation for the pawn. White giving up a piece for a pawn. Not sure what the idea is. And obviously taking with the queen is far more aggressive than the passive taking back with the pawn, which of course also was excellent. But now, don't you just trade queens maybe? Yeah. Because now black is threatening to take on f4. And black is up a piece and one pawn. Huge lead in material. Although the pawn on d7 is obviously a bit annoying for black. You have to look out. So White doesn't have any tricks on the last rank. So to place a knight here to pick up g2 with check, maybe run away with the king then. Bishop at f1 was an excellent move, trying to keep the initiative. Although I should mention that even here on h7 it isn't very safe, because this knight is pointing towards g5, and another knight here would put the black king in jeopardy. So both players down to the last 10-20 seconds. We will see another time scramble here. And black has queen here, taking h5 if he wants to. Looks very safe. A pawn for d2 would be mate. And black quickly picks up a pawn. And that's checkmate. Okay. A nice little smothered mate in the end. So, 8-1 opperwesen. And instead of e4, e5, we see a more calm d4, d5 opening. So, very interesting opening play here. No doubt opperwesen has had a look at this. So he provoked f6 and then quickly retreats to d2. This doesn't look much of a weakness though. Looks quite normal. The knight can go to e7. And the bishop looks a bit passive on d2. But what do I know? So white is putting pressure on the black pawn chain. f5 restricting the bishop. Seems reasonable enough. Also denying the g4 square for the queen. Not so clear what white is supposed to do with his bishop now. A black knight landing on h4 might be a bit annoying. And I don't like this move at all. Seems like a very one-dimensional piece drop. Not the kind of dual-purpose move you would expect from a world champion. And black quickly goes on the offensive on the king's side, giving a piece for a pawn. Not sure it was the right decision though. But obviously black has some compensation. The white bishop on b3 looks really passive. Although if white got the chance to somehow get his king over here to the queen side, then the bishop would make some sense. So white has to look out for a pawn landing on e4. Probably maybe knight f4. Black wants a knight for g3, so he's perfectly okay with the knight trade here. And things are starting to look good for black, because the queen is threatened and black wants to place a knight on g3. A very simple but effective idea. Even knight f2 looks good. And maybe even better, because now it looks like you can get the rook for free. And that kind of looked like opperwesen grabbing a beer in the fridge and taking a sip and just annoying his 8-2 victory, because black is about to win this game, I think. But can he find a knockout blow? That is the question. Not so easy to win against the best guys. They put up so much resistance. It's hard to find the knockout blows. Looks like there could be some sort of discovered check here that is good, but not so easy. So what about knight here? I was thinking king g1, pawn f2 maybe. Okay, too late for that. But now he could go back with a knight. But was that so good? Okay, so the queen can join the attack. A move like knight f3 could crack the white position maybe. But rook h1 mate looks good. Okay, so congratulations to opperwesen, and also congratulations to, was it Vladimir in the chat that predicted 8-2 for opperwesen. Doganswer struck first and last, but in between opperwesen was clearly the best player. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I apologize for any silly move suggestions. I had fun. I ate cookies and I'm happy. Bye bye.